Welcome back. In this chapter we will analyze some rarely played moves for black, which are bishop e6 and king h8. Black can also play rook e8 or h6, but this usually transposes into the main line. And bishop e6 can also transpose to the main line, depends on the play. So h3, king h8. The idea of this move is to play knight g8 and f5, and this is very optimistic idea. It can work in case white plays carelessly, but in case white plays good move, then black can be into worse position. So d4, the typical move. White is again obtaining full center, and he wants to develop his bishop and later his knight, bishop to e3 or knight on d2. Now he threatens to take on e5 and to take on f7, so black must defend his pawn. Because of the king h8 he cannot defend it with rook e8 because pawn on f7 is hanging. That's why he needs to play queen e7, bishop e3. White is leaving the pawn on e4 unprotected, but this pawn can never be taken because of the pinning on the e-file and discovered attacks which can occur after d takes e5 and bishop a7. If black takes this knight with if black takes this pawn with e takes d4, c takes d4, knight e4, d5. White is attacking knight on c6, and his next move will be take on a7 and attack knight on e4. If black moves his knight, then he will lose instantly because rook on a7 will become a target of queen, and after this double attack white is winning a piece. Therefore, after d5, black needs to play bishop e3, rook e3, knight d8, and now bishop c2, attacking the knight, f5, knight d2. White will regain his pawn. Black can indeed attack another white pawn, but we will see that that is definitely not enough. After queen f6, knight takes e4, f takes e4, bishop e4, queen b2, rook c1. White attacks pawn on c7, and rook c1 is a very good move because pawn on c7 is much more important than white pawn on a2, and black cannot take pawn on a2 because after rook c7 both white rooks will come to the 7th rank, and this is just deadly for black. He is lost after, for example, queen b2, bishop b1, king g8 and rook e7. After rook c1 the best move for black is c5, but after this white will just return his pawn, and black will have additionally more weak pawns, d6 and a6, and he'll be later a pawn down. Let's go back to bishop e3. Knight e4 is even worse because after d5 white is immediately winning a piece. After bishop e3, rook e3, best thing for black is knight f2, but white is a piece up. Here probably the best move for black is h6. He is making some useful waiting moves. Now white plays knight d2, bishop d7 and bishop c2. White defends pawn on e4, and he's ready to transfer his knight to g3. Rook e8. If black tries to be aggressive and plays g5, white can play d5, and after bishop takes e3, rook e3, knight d8, knight h2. He already stopped black attack, and Later these pawns h6 and g5 will be proved to be weakened. Rook g8, knight f1, g4, a takes g4, knight g4, rook h3, rook g6, queen d2, king g7, knight g4, bishop takes g4, rook h2, and now the next move is knight g3 or knight c3, and this knight on d8 is very bad. We can see that black basically attacks himself. After bishop c2, instead of g5, it's better for black to play rook e8, and now knight f1. If black takes on d4, c takes d4, knight e4, again d5, it's winning the material. So this is almost never an option for black. After knight f1, black can try knight a5 with ideal knight c4. Here it's possible to take on e5, and white will have a slight advantage because this knight is misplaced, and white wants to play knight d5, so this rook on a7 is also badly placed, and black will need to lose 2 more tempes to improve position of his rook and knight. Instead of king h8, the better move definitely is bishop e6. And now white can play bishop c2, but after d5 this position is very complicated, and it leads to some forced lines. That's why I will suggest move knight bd2, which usually transposes to the main line after h6, knight f1. If black plays rook e8 after knight f1, we are in the same line. The only way for black to avoid this line is to play knight d7 with idea of knight c5, and later maybe hope to play f5. Now knight f1, bishop takes b3, queen b3, knight c5, queen c2. White is still preventing f5 because after f5 he takes f5, rook f5, bishop e3, this rook will hang. Queen c2. White is now preventing f5 because after f5 he takes f5, rook f5, bishop a3. White threatens to take on c5 and then play d4, and the rook on f5 is hanging. Probably the best move for black is rook takes f3, but after g takes f3, black still needs to prove his compensation, and I don't think black has enough compensation for this exchange. After queen c2, knight e6 is the best move, and now bishop e3, bishop e3, knight e3, and this is a typical position from Italian, especially the bishop e6 line, and it's very similar to those in the main line, and white idea is to play rook d1, and if this knight moves from e6 then later d4, this knight can jump to f5 or d5, depends on black plans, and white should not be afraid of move knight f4, because after rook ad1, queen f6, now black threatens to take pawn on h3 because knight on f3 is hanging, but white has here knight d5, and knight h3 is not working in view of king h2, and white wins a piece. After knight d5, black can take on d5, he takes d5, queen knight e7, but now d4, and black and white rooks are very good placed. White has initiative. After knight e6, bishop e3, bishop e3, knight e3. Black can play rook e8, but still rook d1, and white has a slightly more pleasant position. It's important to notice this knight on c6 is not as good as his counterpart on f3, because the pawn on c3 is depriving him squares d4 and b4. After bishop e6, knight bd2, black can play queen d7. After knight f1, the play will most likely transpose to the main line. After rook e8 or h6, knight g3. This is it for these lines, for side lines in the main position of Italian, and thank you for watching, and we will continue later.